Hello, welcome back for another episode of Moms on a Mission. I am your host, Julie Hatch. Thank you for joining me today. I have another lovely guest with me today for everybody to hear, listen to, and watch if you're getting the video version of the podcast. Her name is April Lovett, and she has a business called Unfold Motherhood, or she's on unfoldmotherhood.com. April is a prenatal yoga teacher and trainer. She is a birth doula, and she's a childbirth educator. She helps moms have an empowering pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience, both physically and actually all three, physically, mentally, and emotionally. For the past decade, April has supported thousands of women through pregnancy, birth, and beyond. So welcome, April. Great to have you here today.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here, Julie.
Unfoldmotherhood.com is your website. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So first off, I said that I think everybody knows what prenatal yoga is. And maybe I shouldn't assume that. And a childbirth educator. Most of the moms here understand that, but maybe not everybody knows what a birth doula is. Can you explain what a doula is, or what do you do as a doula?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a birth doula, and what I do when my clients hire me, essentially, I support them through their pregnancy, help them get ready for their birth. So I help them with education. I help them mentally and emotionally. So we work through any fears they might have. I help the couple connect to each other on the journey, help them know what to expect. We have prenatal visits before the birth. And then for the actual birth, I'm there to support them in whatever way they need. So when they go into labor, they'll call me and ask me questions. And then when they want me to come to them to support them in person, I join them at their home or at the birthing place. And I'm there the whole time. And I support them physically and emotionally, however they need. So it could be a lot of hands-on. I could be doing massage. I could be reminding mom to breathe, to release tension. I can be supporting the partner. A lot of times with the partners, they just, birth is overwhelming for everyone, especially the partner seeing the person that they care about in such a position, something they've never experienced before. If it's their first, it can be really hard for them, and they don't know how to respond, and they need that extra support. So a lot of times I'm doulaing the partner as well,
Yeah.
letting them know this is normal, this is good, this is what this means. Why don't you come here and try to do this for her? That might feel good. So we're kind of working as a team to support mom to make sure that she is comfortable and she has everything she needs to bring her baby into the world in just a calm place where she feels whole and she feels supported, whatever that is for her. It's not just, a lot of people think that, well, I want to get an epidural, so I don't need a doula. I support people who get epidurals. I support people who get C-sections. It doesn't matter what your plans are for birth. What matters is that you're educated, that you're making empowered decisions, and that you're supported. And I'm here to help them have those things, so they have an empowering pregnancy and birth experience. And then postpartum, I also help them. So we do postpartum visits. I help them process their birth experience. I help them with healing, so using my background as a movement teacher, and then, breastfeeding questions, things like that. So I kind of guide them through postpartum as well. There is something called a postpartum doula, which I'm not, but they actually do everything the same as a birth doula, but postpartum. So they come in and they give you all the support you need for breastfeeding, postpartum healing. They cook you food. They help you wash your baby supplies, whatever you need, they will do. So there's also that side of it as well. I personally just do the birth side.
That is so important, both prepartum, before delivery, and postpartum. That should just be part of what is included in everybody's labor, pregnancy, labor, delivery, and postpartum. It should just be part of it. My gosh.
It so should be. And it's interesting because I work with a lot of people who are, from different places, and they'll say, where I come from, it's normal. We get these things. We're assigned a midwife, and we get 10 sessions of postpartum PT, and we have all this extra support, and it's so unfortunate that we don't have that here. And I
Mhm.
think that's why the work that I do is so important, because I'm educating people on their journey and letting them know these things are available to you, because otherwise you don't know.
Exactly, especially first-time mothers, and to have certainly the fear of the unknown and all the horror stories you hear of people's labors and that go on for hours and how painful and yada yada yada. Education is that's the best thing you can equip somebody with. And I was also thinking, oh, we were talking about trying to help them make their delivery go as planned. I learned in the NICU, or going to deliveries, is that the best laid plans often go afoul, and that's what having kids is all about. You
Hmm.
can have
Hmm.
everything planned out and your kid's going to throw a monkey wrench into it. So to be prepared, for you to be there to help them through that, those surprises, and really the education to not to be afraid or surprised at what comes along.
Yeah, I always tell everyone, education is the best part. Like, you have to do it, because if you don't know your options, you don't have any.
Yeah,
And I think learning that during pregnancy can really change your entire experience as a mother, because it just shifts how you prepare and how you look at the whole journey.
so true, so very true. Yep. Is that your yoga studio that you're in?
It is, yes.
So this is where you do your prenatal yoga classes?
Hmm. Yeah, this is it. It looks a little different than it used to. We made some big shifts, when COVID happened,
Yeah.
but we have like this small, quaint space, and we have, small group classes a couple times a week.
And you've got a gong there. Do you do any sound
I do,
healing?
yes. I do sound baths twice a month,
Nice.
and they are absolute bliss if you haven't experienced them before.
Yeah. Yep. I know they are. That's wonderful. Okay. So I think that I had read that you say that you use um, movement to feel better physically for the mothers. You teach them meditation to help reduce their stress, and education, which we just talked a little bit, to take away the fear and replace it with confidence. So can you talk a little bit more about what you do with movement and meditation, or how you incorporate them, or whatever you may have to say about what you use them for?
Yeah, so I try to my students who come to me during pregnancy, I try to instill this kind of habit, I guess, within them, to realize how important movement and meditation and connecting is,
Mm,
and that they carry that into postpartum. I'm also a postpartum movement teacher, so I teach postpartum classes. And in those classes, we will move the body in ways that, open it up and create space. Because as moms, we hold so much tension. We carry tiny humans. There's so much tension in the upper back and the shoulders. And,
mm,
sometimes we don't even realize we're holding all of this
yeah.
tension. So I try to teach them just these really easy movements and stretches that they can do when their kids doing tummy time on the floor, or when they're waiting for their coffee to heat up,
Hmm.
and incorporating also these really simple, just breathing, connect to your
Yeah.
breath. So a lot of times I'll be like, "Hey, get a post-it note and write breathe on it, and put one in your bathroom and put one on your computer, and just kind of put them throughout the house. And when you see them, take a couple of deep breaths." And those little things add up. And once they start to do them, they start to realize, like, oh my gosh, I really needed to take a breath. And they start to do it more. What I see with my postpartum moms is, so often they tell me, well, I don't have time to go to yoga, April. I don't have time to like take an hour class, and I have a baby, so I can't do a class online. And I'm just like, okay, we're not going to make excuses. We're going to make you a priority, but we're going to cut it into these little pieces
Mm,
throughout your day. So you're only taking, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, and it will all add up. It's cumulative. It's going to be just as beneficial, and you just have to do what you can without stressing you out. And I think shifting that perspective postpartum is really important.
yep.
Also realizing that we have to take care of ourselves in order to be whole and take care of our family the way that we want to. Otherwise, we're going to snap a lot faster. We're going to get
Yep.
frustrated, and then we're just stressing ourselves out. So these little things make a big difference.
They do. And But you're saying you're using the postpartum example because that's primarily what you do, but this is absolutely true for any mother at any stage, probably certainly through
forever.
teenagers. How many times do we need to breathe when we're dealing with our teenagers? So those little post-its saying reminding to breathe is just, that's brilliant. It's simple, but I'm sure it's effective. That's great.
Extremely effective. And it's kind of when I say postpartum, I'm like postpartum is forever.
Yeah.
So once you are postpartum, you're always postpartum. And everything that I teach to my moms is the same thing I teach to my students that come to me just for regular classes,
Yeah.
because it's something we all need as humans. I have an 11-year-old and a
Mhm.
5-year-old, so I totally get. I'm in like a very different place than the people that I work with who have babies.
Mhm.
But we all use these skills, and we're going to use them forever.
Yep. Yeah. And actually, I believe that parents can, if they can adopt it and incorporate this into their lives, they can then help their kids incorporate it into their lives. And kids, it's really a lot easier because they're more accepting and open and willing to try and all that kind of stuff. So it can get passed on down the generations, and you're starting at a good place.
Yeah, I had a yoga teacher once, and she used to tell us, "You're a mother. You're not a martyr. You have to take care of yourself." And what I have learned, because I mean, I feel like the first few years of my child's life, I was like, I did too much. I stressed myself out. I thought I had to do everything. But what I've learned is if I take care of myself, I'm better. But then she's seeing me take care of myself. And now my kids know, like, oh, mom's going to soccer today. Like, this is her time. Or, mom's going to do this and this is her time. Or she's doing yoga. I want to do yoga with her. Like, I like
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So they pick this up from us. And if we're just running ourselves to the ground, that's what they're going to think is okay.
So
And
true.
we're not setting a good example for their future self.
Yep. So true. And as my sister once said to me, a happy mom makes for happy kids, not the other way around. Well, yes, the other way around, but a happy mom is important for happy kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell me about the yoga of motherhood and how less is more. Can you sort of expound on that statement that you have said?
Yeah, so the yoga of motherhood, kind of like I mentioned previously, it looks different. So, before we had kids, if we practiced yoga or just did anything that we enjoyed, we had all of the time that we needed to dedicate to it.
Hmm.
We could take time and go to whatever class we wanted. We didn't have to rush. We weren't stressed about it. We could take 2 classes a day if we wanted to. We had this time, and then we become mothers and everything is rushed and heightened, and we have a lot to do. We're balancing having children, and if they're smaller children, I found that a lot of moms feel really anxious, not being with them,
Yeah.
but we have to have that time away. So like yoga looks different when we become mothers, when we
Hmm.
become parents. So the yoga of motherhood is shifting the perspective of what we thought we needed and realizing that any little bit that we can do here or there is what we need now. It's
Yeah.
what we have, it's what we can do to feel better, and not stressing yourself out thinking it needs to look or be a certain way. And I think
Yeah.
that's motherhood in a nutshell,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It doesn't have to look or be a certain way, and we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to someone else's experience or journey because we don't really know the truth behind it, right? Especially with social
True.
media.
True.
It's just like not healthy for us in a
Yep.
lot of ways. So the yoga of motherhood is just finding your own flow to find ease in your life and doing things in a way that work for you,
Hmm.
not in a way that you think they should be.
Hmm.
And a lot of that is, let it be easy. That's like my mantra. What can you do to make this easier? And shifting that perspective, like, oh, how could I make this easier? Well, like, I don't have to get up at 5 a.m. before the baby to work out or before the kids go to school. If I'm tired, I can sleep and I'll find a way to get some other movement in throughout my day.
Yeah.
So just shifting that perspective is really what I mean by the yoga of motherhood.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is being able to let it go. It's you have to be able to let some stuff go.
Yes,
And life will go on
absolutely.
and your kids will survive and they'll be fine. And yeah, don't get up. If you just are too tired to get up at 5 a.m., let that exercise class go for the day or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's, our kids have things to do and we want to be a part of those things, but then we don't have time to clean the house or cook them the healthy dinner we thought we would cook. That's okay. Like
Yeah.
we can find this balance. Sometimes just being present
Yeah.
with what is happening, with what you want to be present with, and letting the other things slide, that's okay.
That's beautiful. I totally get it, and I absolutely agree with you, and completely agree with you. And
It's a
hopefully,
practice.
yeah, it does take practice, and it helps to have someone like you reminding people and giving them little tidbit ideas of how they can de-stress a little bit and incorporate more into their not more things into their life, but incorporate more yoga attitude into their life,
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly. It's definitely a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have you? Go ahead.
so one thing that's really interesting that you kind of reminded me of is we talk about we don't have time, we're so busy. And I always ask my moms, I'm like, do you scroll the internet by any chance? And they're like, yeah, at the end of the night, I just like scroll aimlessly on Instagram because it like shuts my brain off. And I'm like, well, what if instead you stretch for 5 minutes and see how you feel? And the ones that do that are just like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know how much I needed that. And I
Yeah.
was like, we find these pockets of time that we kind of don't realize we have. And if we just kind of change how we use them, it can change how we feel.
Yeah. Yep. Plus, doing anything other than being on social media is an improvement. But
Absolutely.
I know it's an addiction. Everybody does it and everybody has it. But yeah, that's a twofold benefits of stretching and not being on social media for a little while.
Yeah.
So when you are busy with little kids, do you have any ways that people can incorporate movement and or mindfulness into your daily life or into your life as a mom? Well, movement especially, other than leaning over and taking them in and out of the car seats.
Yeah. So I am a big fan of functional movement and essentially incorporating a variety of movement into your day without having to like make time for the gym.
Yeah.
So you have to get kind of creative. And it could be something as simple as, the kids are playing on the floor, you sit next to them and like do some squats and some
Hmm.
stretching while
Hmm.
they're playing, and you're still kind of with them. When I take my kids to the playground, I will like hang on the bars and like take that opportunity to just like stretch out my spine. And I mean, I probably look silly. All the other parents are playing on their phones, but I'm just like playing on the monkey bars. So getting creative with your movement. If you sit a lot for whatever reason, take time to change how you sit. Can you sit on the floor
Hmm.
instead of sitting at your desk? Can you incorporate more walking? Instead of driving to the store or, driving to the park, can you walk
Yeah.
to that place?
Yeah.
Just kind of figuring out how you can add movement into your day without having to take a big chunk of it. And then it becomes your regular life. You're like, oh, okay, like I sit on the floor, my hips feel better.
Yeah.
I've been stretching my arms in the doorway in the morning, and then it just like opens up my chest and relaxes my shoulders. And as we become more in the habit of it,
Mm.
we feel better
Hmm.
overall. And we didn't really have to do anything differently. We
Yeah.
didn't have to change our schedules. We didn't have to find more time. So
Yeah.
I think finding those little things is really a game changer for how we feel physically.
Yeah. And like you say, it needs to be a habit, or at least you have to remind yourself every day, oh yeah, let's do this. I should do this. I
Yeah.
should do that.
Some people will set timers. So
Yeah.
if like they'll set like, a timer for 30 minutes and be like, okay, in 30 minutes, I'm going to get outside and stretch. Or, if the kids are home, like maybe we'll like play a game where we're like moving our bodies. And then you're connecting with your children, but then
Yeah.
you're also getting the benefit of moving your body.
Yeah. And that's a good example for your kids. This makes me think of this mother that I see. I think that she's a stay-at-home mother because she obviously has time. But the way that she uses her time is she has I don't know, a daughter in, I don't know, first or second grade at low elementary school. And then she has another daughter who's younger, because that younger daughter walks with her. So she's maybe 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old, and walks. And she walks her kids up the street. She walks probably at least a mile to drop the older one off at school. And then she and the younger one go back home. And then in the afternoon, she and the younger one go up. And they just casually walk. Nobody's in a rush. They just casually walk along. They're getting their fresh air. And the girls are so, they get along, and I don't know, it's just a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay. And so what about mindfulness and meditation? How do you, or I guess mindfulness, I should say, is there anything more that you have to say about incorporating that into parenting life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a practice. All of this is a practice. I think mindfulness is probably the most important thing we need to teach ourselves as parents. I think being a parent is very forward thinking. We're always
Mm,
thinking about, if they're smaller, what's the next milestone? What appointments do they have next? And then, as they get older, it's like, okay, they have this happening tomorrow. What's our schedule this week? Do you have homework? There's all of this forward thinking.
yeah,
And I think learning to be more present in the current moment, not necessarily thinking about the past or the future, is what we need to do more of. And it's not going to be all the time, but if we can be present, it makes time feel like it's not moving so fast,
yeah.
and it increases the quality of the time that we spend together.
Hmm.
So, like in my household at dinner time, we sit together as a family. Like, no matter what. If the kids are just eating and we're not eating until later, we'll sit with them and chat with them while they eat. We don't have our phones at the table. That is just our time to be present and connect.
Yep.
So, finding these moments throughout your day to be present with yourself, with your family, with your children, it really impacts how you feel about the experience, and it makes you not feel so stressed about
Yeah.
what's going to happen next,
Right.
because we're just here right now, and
Yep.
that's okay. So finding ways to just practice that more often can change the entire parenting journey, I think.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in here. Yes, we certainly do need to plan, but there's a lot more going on up here than needs be constantly. At least if we take some time to just not listen to all that stuff and just be with what's in front of us, that's huge. That's huge to both kids feeling that you are there present with them,
Mhm.
and it's also good for your own sanity.
Yeah, and I think we have to realize too, as our kids get older, if we're with them and we're on our phone, we're not really with them, and they
Yeah,
know that.
yeah,
So, setting the example of how we think they should be in the future, we don't want them to be on their phone all the time where they're having a conversation. So I know I try to really put my phone away when I can, because I don't want that in between us.
yeah,
So I just try to, like, put it in a different room and be present with them as much as possible, because it really takes away like the load of stress that we carry. And
yeah.
then we also realize that what we thought was really important probably isn't
Yes.
that big of a deal. And changing
So
that
true.
perspective is really important as well, because most of the stuff that we think that we're stressed out about doesn't matter. I know the holidays are coming, and a lot of my moms are talking about how they're stressed and they have all these things to do, and they're going to make cookies and they're going to do this and they have to do all this stuff. And she's like, but I don't like doing it because it's so messy.
Hmm.
And I said, why don't you just let it be a little easier? Lay out some big papers, put the stuff on there, and just let them go crazy. And then you pick it all up and you throw it away. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to do it for them.
Yeah.
Let them do it themselves. If the gingerbread house doesn't stand up, that's okay. They just had fun making a mess.
Yep. Yep.
So
That's
how can
right.
we make these things easier?
Yeah. And that's reality too. Gingerbread houses don't come out perfectly, usually.
Absolutely don't.
Um, Back to what you were saying about the phones, I realized quite a long time ago that when I'm with somebody who's on their phone, whoever they're talking to, whoever's on the other end of the phone, whether it's texting or talking, is more important to that person than I am right in front of their face. That's how I feel. And so I think that our kids feel that same way too. If we're trying to split our attention and really paying more attention to the phone, then they are less important to that person on the phone. And maybe they are, but it's a wrong message to send.
Yeah, there was a story that I heard once that really resonated with me. And this woman was talking about how she worked from home and she felt like that was like a good way to connect to her kids, to be there. And she was trying to like send an email or something, and her daughter was telling her story, and she just kept
Yeah,
smiling and nodding. And then her daughter finally says, "Why are you smiling? This is not a happy story." And she realized she just wasn't listening.
yeah,
And that really made her like shift how she was with her kids.
yep,
And I think we all do that sometimes.
yep. But they know, they pick it up.
They do. Yeah. I mean, that one really got me. So
Yeah, yep.
be present.
Be present. It's just, it's so important. And it does, it takes, definitely takes practice, 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 practice. And it's, you can't do it all the time. You can't always be
Exactly.
present, but the more that we are able to practice it, I think that the easier it becomes and more natural it becomes maybe.
Absolutely.
So I love your little ideas about the post-it notes reminding to breathe. What other, do you have any other practical tips about, I mean, you have been giving tips all the way through. Do you have any ones that any more that you want to add about how to make motherhood a little easier for all the moms listening?
Yeah. So the post-it one is my favorite. But one thing I tell my moms to do is if you are driving, every time you hit a light, practice deep diaphragmatic breathing,
Mhm.
releasing tension, and just letting the traffic light be your reminder.
Mm,
The other thing that we do a lot of is I talk about gratitude. And I always say, at the beginning of your day or the end of your day, just think of two things that you're grateful for that happened today. What two things do you feel gratitude for? And I feel like we can come up with two things. We
oh
can do it
yeah.
before we wake up, we can do it before we go to bed. We could also just tell our kids, like, I'm so grateful for you. Just finding ways to bring more gratitude into your life
Hmm.
changes the experience because we're always feeling the stress, and that overwhelms all the great things that
Yep,
are happening.
yep,
So, incorporating more gratitude into your journey in whatever way works for you. Some people like to journal, some people like to think about it, some people like to say it out loud. So,
yep.
finding what resonates for you. And then, just being present, using the breath reminder, and eventually, I feel like this is once you get all the other things down. I ask my moms to take 3 minutes a day, whether it's 1 minute 3 times a day or 3 minutes in a cluster, to just be.
Yeah,
There's an app that I tell them all to download. It's called Insight Timer. I don't know if you've heard of it.
nope.
It's a great meditation app. It's free. It's on Apple and Android. I sound like I'm a commercial for it. Um, but it's a meditation app. They have meditations, they have motherhood specific meditations, they have anything you could possibly think of. So if you're like 3 minute meditation, there it is. So
Wow.
I encourage them to take that time, either 1 minute 3 times a day or 3 minutes, and just be
See,
still and just be quiet and just envelop in that.
that's a wonderful
And
thing.
it is. And I've found with a lot of them, if they started doing this pretty early in their journey, now they tell me, like, oh, I do 5 minutes a day. Like, that's great
Yeah,
because it gets easier and it really helps just with life. Like, we all need to do that, whether you're a mother or not.
yep, just to be.
Yeah. And if it's stressing you out, don't worry about it. Like, do it tomorrow. It's not a big deal.
I love your attitude. I love your attitude, April. So true. So tell me a little bit, we've got a little bit more time. How did you end up doing this? How did you land on this? I don't know what your background is. It sounds like at least it's yoga, but so how did you land on doing what you do? All of this prenatal stuff and postpartum stuff.
Yeah, so I had loved yoga my whole life. I always thought like being a yoga teacher would be fun, but I don't think I would have ever like made that shift until I was pregnant with my first, and I went through that pregnancy, and I found a prenatal yoga teacher who taught one class a week. It was really hard to get to. I had to like leave my job early,
Mm,
and it helped me so much because I was so stressed about pregnancy and like what was going to come and like how my life was going to change, and it can be very scary. And I knew when I was taking her classes, I was like, I want to teach prenatal yoga. Like, this is awesome. And I said, I want to teach prenatal yoga for people who have office jobs like I did. I worked in corporate and need like those evening classes, because there were none. They were all at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It just didn't make sense to me. So I knew for sure I was going to do that. And then I went through my birth, and my birth was a mess. I had an unnecessary induction. I thought I was prepared. I was totally not prepared. And I had a really challenging birth, which then fed into a very challenging postpartum. There was nothing postpartum. There was no community. There was no place where I could find support. I just didn't know what to do. And then circle forward to my prenatal teacher training, I found like this whole world. It was taught by doulas. I learned about birth and about how it affects your postpartum, and like all this community support that you can create for people in postpartum. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I started teaching prenatal yoga at studios, and my classes were packed, and I was teaching at 3 different places, and people were like following me all over Orange County. So I eventually was like, okay, I want my own space where I can have my classes and I can do some workshops. And then I found a space, like magically perfect space down the street from my house. I opened. Prenatal yoga was just like amazing. We had 5 classes a week. The classes were packed. We would have like 20 moms in a class, which it was so great. I miss that so much. I can't wait till those things can come back. But we built this community, and I became a birth doula and a childbirth educator and a placenta encapsulation specialist. And my goal was to help people not have the experience that I had, because I learned that the experience that I had was common. Like, it was just a normal experience. And there was no need for people to have an experience like that. Because that affects everything. It affected how I bonded to my baby. And I thought there was something wrong with me. And then I learned, like, no, this is normal. Like, we understand why it happens. So what I do now is I just support people through their pregnancy. I hope to empower them. I hope to educate them. And I hope that helps them have a better postpartum experience. And we've created the community of postpartum moms to find connection, to find other moms. And we have people who have, because I've been here for 10 years, I have people with 10-year-olds who are still like connected to me and take my other classes, or they're connected to moms that took classes. And hearing their stories about how like what we do here impacted them positively is priceless. So I'm just so excited that I can help someone else's experience be a good experience.
That's great. And as you had said earlier, that we're all postpartum, and you're forever postpartum. Once a mother, always a mother, and so that's probably always postpartum. So that's great. So when you're the 10 years postpartum, this is maybe postpartum still, but still connected and reaping the benefits that you brought to them.
I mean, I think ultimately, once you reach that point, it all comes to community. And I've been lucky enough to create such an amazing community of women, and whether they've had babies or not, like, they all find this connection together, because they're all, we're all looking for the same thing. We want to find ease. We want to live the life that we desire,
and that feels good.
We just find that connection together, which is great.
That is good. I don't know if you have any specific, you just sort of did give an example of the mom of the 10-year-old and how she is still connected, but do you have any any other stories of women that you've worked with? I'm trying to think of what I had read on, I think, your website. Women who practice prenatal yoga and education have better pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. So do you have any stories of, or I don't know, testimonials, for lack of a better word, from moms who have worked with you and how it has benefited them? Other than the fact that it's obvious from what you've just told us for the past half hour, but any specific ones that you can think of?
So I actually have like a couple that are very similar. And what they've all said is, the relaxation techniques and the breathing techniques they learned in pregnancy got them through birth. It helped them, manage everything that came up. It helped them, their pelvic floor was nice and healthy, so pushing was easier for them. And then postpartum, they felt like the healing process was easier.
Yeah.
Their pelvic floor healed efficiently. They didn't have any issues there. They didn't have any pains. They used the breathing techniques to ease themselves back into their practice. And then they started using what they learned in prenatal yoga postpartum to feel better, to just release those aches and pains. They felt more bonded to their baby. I had one mom who she came to me for her second, and she talked about how this experience was so different.
Yeah.
And she believes it was because she did the yoga, and her partner took private classes with me to kind of work through what had happened previously and to get refreshed on everything. And she said that that experience felt empowering, and it felt empowering because she knew her options.
Yeah.
And she didn't know them before.
Yeah.
And then she said she felt more connected to that baby right away.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when we have really hard births, we're in a place where it's hard to connect to our baby immediately. But if we have a better experience, we feel more connected sooner.
Yeah.
And that affects everything. It affects what the healing process looks for you physically and emotionally postpartum. And these are really important imprinted experiences that we will look back on and carry forever. So why not try to have the best experience that we can? And I think starting with me earlier makes them realize, like, oh, this matters. Like, I'm going to do the work.
Yeah.
Because otherwise,
it does matter.
you don't know. And it's not your fault if you don't know.
Right. And it's not hard work that you're having people do. It's enjoyable, and I don't know if it's easy. It feels good, so therefore it's got to make it a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
Do you work, because you're on the West Coast and I'm on the East Coast, do you work do you do virtual as well as in person? Say somebody from the East Coast says, I want to work with April. Can they do that online with you?
Yes. Yeah. So I do virtual. I created a program for pregnancy. In the new year, I'm also doing online support groups. They're like, I haven't figured out what I'm going to name them yet, but they're empowerment groups for women. And if you think of like a mastermind, it's a mastermind for women who just want to find more ease in their life. And, most of my clients are mothers. They're not all mothers, but it's geared towards that for sure. So I'm doing a lot of online stuff now. So online and in person, which is really cool because I've gotten to work with so many more people.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you can be flexible that way. I know that can be challenging to do both, especially in what you're talking about. Certainly there's a lot of, I would think that there's a lot of hands-on, obviously during birth as a doula, but that's great that you can do all of the prenatal and postpartum stuff online too.
Yeah, it's been great because, as a doula, I can only see so many clients.
Yeah.
So the pregnancy coaching has been interesting because I've gotten to work with so many people in different places. So I feel like I can make almost a bigger impact by doing both. I still love in person, and nothing beats going to a birth, but I can only go to so many.
Yeah, it's true. There's nothing like it. And I as a nurse practitioner, I had told you I've seen thousands of births, and almost still on all of them, although I've sort of left that area, so it's been quite a few years since I've been to a birth, but for all those years I would still get goosebumps. Sometimes I would tear up. It is just such an amazing, beautiful event in life, and it never gets old, it never gets tiring. They're all different. It's really cool, and I'm sure it takes a lot out of you being there present as a doula.
Yeah, I love it, but it is exhausting. I will say that. And I agree with you. No matter how many times you see a birth, it's always magical. And it's always like, wow, like how does this happen? Like, that's why when you leave a birth, there's like that birth high. You're just like, yes, like, it's so amazing. I always tell my husband, I'm like, I can't sleep right now. I'm still on a birth high.
Yep, I get that. All right, well, April, I think we're running out of time. I think we have run out of time. So thank you for being here. This is April Lovett, who is, her business is Unfold Motherhood. You can find her at unfoldmotherhood.com. And she'll tell you all about prenatal, during delivery, and postpartum, postpartum, life as a mother forever, really. So that was some really helpful stuff that you told us, April. Very informative, and I appreciate you being here. So I am going to sign out. We are done with this episode for this week. Thank you for being here and watching. Stay tuned for next week, and share this. Feel free to share it, send it around to some friends, especially if they're pregnant or soon to be delivering. And I'll see you next week.